Should you write unit tests, integration tests, or maybe even end-to-end tests? And why not all of them? I've had this debate so many times throughout my career, and the answer is never simple. It's always, it depends on the scenario and the software you're building. Now, to develop this, unit tests should be simple, but sometimes you are dealing with external services that are quite complicated. And writing unit tests for integrations with third-party services might require you to write some mocks or stubs or anything of that sort so that you can emulate some of the API calls and interface calls to these other services. And this can get pretty complicated very quickly, and it can make your unit tests very hard to maintain. In this case, I would actually recommend that you do integration testing. And I'm not saying that you need to do either or. You can do unit testing for certain scenarios, and you can supplement it with integration testing for other scenarios where you can actually guarantee that the changes you make are not causing problems elsewhere and that the system as a whole is functioning as it should be. Integration tests also help you uncover problems that you might not necessarily discover with unit tests alone, because as much as you like to mock these services, you're not going to be able to cover all of the possible scenarios and states and situations that that third-party service might be in. And there will be situations where you're not going to be able to even predict or design for. That's why integration tests are a great way for you to identify these problems and write fixes for them way before your code hits production. Now, when it comes to end-to-end tests, it does make sense, and sometimes you have to write them. My team and I have recently been building a Kubernetes operator, for example, and we have written extensive unit tests that cover everything from the controller's behavior to the Helm charts, the templates, everything needed we wrote unit tests for. However, there will always have been scenarios that we were not able to cover and properly assess whether they function or not with changes with unit tests alone. That's why we had to come up and write end-to-end tests. We didn't necessarily need to use any external framework. We simply wrote GitHub Actions workflows, and all they did was set up a Kubernetes cluster, install the operator on them, and emulate all of the different scenarios that our end users would be using our operator for. And this gave us a lot more confidence that whenever we introduced changes, it did not break other areas in the system. And it also prevented us from doing a lot of manual testing, because when the end-to-end tests run and they are green, that means everything is solid and we're able to push changes and releases way more often than what we would have normally been able to do if we didn't write these end-to-end tests. So different types of tests have different purposes. You have to really think about the context you're operating within and use a good combination of all of these different types of tests for your benefit, and whatever helps you gain more confidence in the changes you introduce and helps the project get released much faster.